Hello and welcome back to the Brave podcast, Doing Travel Differently. I'm Faye, founder of The Brave, and today's episode comes from another one of our Brave stays, Casa della Nonna, our simple mountain home in the tiny village of Monzone Alto in Lunigiana, northern Tuscany. But today's episode isn't really about a house, it's about the journey. It's about what happens when we stop being quite fixated on getting from A to B and allow ourselves to get a little sidetracked along the way. Because one of my biggest reflections from this visit was incredibly simple. Sometimes the detour is the destination. Unlike some of our other Brave stays, Casa della Nonna wasn't a major renovation project. She doesn't really need me, I need her. I return to give her some TLC, making sure everything is okay, potter around the garden and keep on top of those little jobs that come with owning an old Italian mountain house. But mostly I return because I love being there. And every visit gives me another opportunity to explore Lunigiana and the extraordinary diversity surrounding it. Pisa is the most convenient airport, but Casa Nonna is accessible from Genoa, Florence, Bologna, and even Milan. And I don't see that as an inconvenience. I see it as an opportunity. I've never really understood the idea that the drive to your destination is wasted time. Why should the experience begin when you arrive at your accommodation? Why can't it begin when you leave home? Fly somewhere different, break up the journey, stay overnight somewhere you've previously never considered. Turn off the motorway, stop for coffee, have a swim in a lake, get lost a little bit. Because sometimes being too focused upon the destination distracts us from experiencing the moment. And sometimes that unexpected moment becomes the part we remember most. So this particular journey started with £40 return flights from Luton to Bologna. I'd originally thought I'd spend some time exploring Bologna itself. It's one of the few major Italian cities I haven't visited, and given its architecture and gastronomic reputation, it's somewhere that's been on my list for quite a long time. But travelling with a hire car changes things. Parking in Italian city centres isn't always straightforward, and looking slightly further out often brings better value accommodation, easier parking, and other unexpected benefits. You discover places you weren't actually looking for. So I stayed in Casalecchio di Reno, just outside Bologna. In fact, only 12 minutes drive from the airport. And what was essentially intended as somewhere convenient to sleep became part of the holiday. The Boutique Hotel Calzavecchio surpassed my expectations massively. Beautiful design, spotlessly clean, a warm welcome, and a really lovely neighbourhood. A very late dinner in fact, at Street Kitchen, a short walk away, gave me an unexpectedly chilled first evening. And the first morning, rather than rushing into Bologna, I went for a run along the river. I got slightly lost. Maybe I didn't, because I discovered beautiful riverside scenery that I never would have seen if I'd have stuck rigidly to the original itinerary. Bologna will still be there next time. And that is slow travel. It doesn't necessarily mean travelling for months. It means giving yourself permission to be present wherever you happen to be. The journey towards Casa Nonna continued. It was incredibly hot, and somewhere along the motorway I started thinking about swimming. And then I thought about Saturnia, then thermal springs. And then I wondered, well, how far is Saturnia? I had a vague recollection it was located somewhere between Rome and Florence. What other thermal places are actually along my route? Saturnia ended up being far too much of a detour, a couple of hours in fact. But another quick search led me to Montecatini Terme. And I didn't find the informal, natural thermal bathing experience that I'd imagined to there. That's what I was really looking for, natural thermal pools, maybe a waterfall thrown in. But what I found instead was a beautiful spa town with magnificent architecture, parkland, restaurants, and a wonderful sense of grandeur. And that's another lesson. Not finding what you were looking for doesn't necessarily mean the search was unsuccessful. Sometimes you find something else. Eventually, later that day, I arrived at Casa della Nonna, and it really does feel like coming home. This time, there was even a welcoming committee. Billy, the new village puppy who developed a slightly concerning affection for my leopard print trainers. Opening an old mountain house after you've been away for a while always comes with slight trepidation. I learned the hard way during the previous winter that looking after a stone mountain house in Tuscany isn't quite the same as looking after a house in England. I'd left windows slightly open, believing ventilation would help, but heavy winter rainfall taught me otherwise. Lesson learned. Seal her during the winter months that are wet, and then when summer comes, throw everything open and let the house breathe. This time, thankfully, she was absolutely fine. Apart from the mystery of the missing hot water, solved with the help of my lovely neighbour Mario when we discovered that my father had simply turned off the gas supply. A little gardening, some weeding, and that was about it, which could mean I could go off exploring. From Casa Nonna you can walk down towards Equi Terme, and on this particular afternoon I headed to the river. There are formal thermal facilities in Equi Terme, but I personally prefer the natural experience. Sitting in the river where the sulphurous thermal waters emerge, families quietly enjoying the afternoon around you before moving slightly upstream to the dramatically colder water tumbling through the cascades. Warm, cold, mountains surrounding you, sun on your face, and at virtually no cost whatsoever. It made me think again about how we package well-being. Sometimes well-being is sold as something luxurious and expensive, a spa weekend, a retreat, a premium experience, but well-being can also include walking down a mountain path, swimming in a river, eating slowly and with consciousness, watching the sunset, sleeping deeply, moving your body, being outside. And Casa Nonna reminds me that living well doesn't necessarily mean spending extravagantly. And then there's the food. Lunigiana is a remarkable food heritage rooted in its landscape and traditions, and today that heritage is being actively protected through slow food initiatives, including local presidia, protecting foods such as the artisanal pontremoli, testerolo, and marocca di casola. Excuse my pronunciation, the traditional chestnut flour bread of this mountainous region. This food tells you something about the place, about scarcity, about agriculture, about seasonality, about ingenuity, about tradition and survival. And for me, that's what slow food should be about. Not simply eating slowly, but understanding where the food comes from, who produced it, why it exists, and why protecting those traditions matters. Dinner that evening was at Albergo La Posta in Equi Terme, a handwritten menu, incredibly reasonable prices, occasionally a little uncertainty about exactly what might arrive, and I love it. It's organic, it's unrehearsed, it's unstaged, it isn't designed around tourist expectations, it's simply there doing what it does, and supporting businesses like that is another part of travelling differently. Your money stays closer to the community. You eat food connected to the region, and you experience something you probably couldn't replicate elsewhere. The following day I headed towards the coast. One of the misconceptions about staying somewhere like Monzone Alto is perhaps, but what's there to do? My answer is increasingly, how long have you got? This time I wanted somewhere I could walk, eat seafood and swim, and I discovered Bocca di Magra. But first came another accidental discovery, Sarzana. I'd spent several previous journeys looking at a hilltop settlement from the motorway headed up from Pisa to La Spezia, and had somehow convinced myself that this was Sarzana. It wasn't. I still don't know what that hilltop village is. I'll find out one day. That's another mystery for another visit. But because I got it wrong, I discovered actual Sarzana. And what a discovery! Beautiful streets, restaurants, floral displays, decorative lacework, and preparations underway for a live music event, one of many in this region. It reinforced something else I'd increasingly appreciate about this region. Culture is everywhere. Music, food, festivals, outdoor activities, walking, adventure, well-being. Follow local community pages. There's seemingly always something happening. And then came Bocca di Magra, close to better-known Lerici and San Terenzo, but quieter, much easier to park, and noticeably slower. A promenade for walking, seafood restaurants, places to swim, space to breathe, another place firmly added to my list of favourites. And there's an important destination lesson in all of this. Travelling differently isn't only beneficial to us. Think of the places I've mentioned during one relatively short journey. Casalecchio di Reno, Montecatini Terme, Monzone Alto, Equi Terme, Sarzana, Bocca di Magra, Fivizzano. None of these discoveries required me to stop visiting Italy's famous destinations. They simply spread my presence more widely. My hotel spend somewhere else. My coffee spend somewhere. My dinner went somewhere. My fuel, groceries and pastries went somewhere. And that's one of the simplest ways we can reduce pressure on tourism hotspots. We don't necessarily have to stop travelling. Sometimes we simply need to cast the net a little wider. And that's exactly what I did on the return journey. I'd missed my planned toll-free mountain route on the way down, so this time I was determined to take it. First, Fivizzano, a stop at one of my favourite cafes, Pasticceria, proper Italian coffee, a little wonder, and then across the mountains towards Emilia-Romagna. It took considerably longer. I drove considerably slower. There were moments when the mountain roads made me question my decision, but boring? Absolutely not. The scenery was extraordinary, and with more time I'd have stopped again in one of the mountain albergos looking over the Apennines. Next time, because there always should be a next time. So what did this visit teach me? Perhaps nothing revolutionary, but something we need reminding of things we've forgotten. Sometimes we need reminding of things we've forgotten. Travel doesn't have to be a race between attractions. The quickest route isn't necessarily the best route. Getting lost isn't necessarily wasted time. Luxury doesn't have to be expensive or mean expensive. Well-being doesn't have to come in a package. And authentic Italy doesn't exist solely in Florence, Rome, Venice, or the Tuscan destinations we've all seen on Instagram. Sometimes it exists in a handwritten menu, a mountain river, a village puppy, a neighbour helping you to get the gas back on, a coffee in Fivizzano, a road you didn't intend to take, or simply sitting outside an old stone house watching the sun disappear behind the mountains. Casa della Nonna gives me a base, but what I love most is everything she gives me permission to discover beyond her front door. And perhaps that's the real lesson from this trip. Don't just travel to the destination. Travel through the journey. Leave some gaps. Follow your curiosity. Spend locally. Take the wrong turn occasionally. Slow down enough to notice what's around you, because you might discover that the things you weren't looking for become the very reason you travel. Until next time, let's be brave, let's get a little sidetracked, and let's keep doing travel differently.